Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet. Today we have a very special guest joining us all the way from Winnipeg, Canada. We have Brandi Vezina. How's it going today?
Good, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to have you here. Glad I didn't butcher your name. I always have that fear of somebody could sit here and tell me their last name 20 times over, and then my mind just goes blank as soon as it's like, oh, time to introduce him. We'll see how this goes.
All
So,
good. Worked out.
awesome, awesome. So how are things going for you up in how's things going in Canada?
Things in my life are absolutely fantastic, but it's really confusing. Right now, our weather is like a month ahead, and the squirrels and the birds are coming out. It's so strange, but I don't know. But I'm just going at it, and I have two wild Mustang horses, and
Mm-hmm.
today I was supposed to work with our trainer, but it was too icy, so just kind of have to accept things as they are right now.
Fair, fair, fair. We're kind of having a similar thing, except all of our flowers and stuff are starting to bloom a
Oh.
month early, and they're like, "Yo, if we get a freeze, this is going to be very bad because that's going to kill everything." So,
Especially
yeah.
for food and crops, right?
Yep, yep. Because we got a huge pecan industry down here, a lot of peaches and stuff of that nature. So it's just like, oh boy, I'll be interested to see how this all plays out. So.
Wow, you're in the South then, eh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm in Texas, so I'm based out of Waco, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah,
What a wild world. Amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got here about 4.5 years ago. I'm originally from Chicago, um, and yeah, so I moved here about 4.5 years ago, and I love it.
Cool. You sound like you're from the North.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that I get that all the time. So I keep telling myself, "Oh, you've lost your northern accent. It's gone." And I'm like, I talk to somebody from the north, and it's like, "Nope, it's still there." Okay, fair, fair, fair. So, um, so you're born and raised in Winnipeg?
Yes, just outside of Winnipeg. I grew up in the country. We moved to the city, and then I'm from a small town outside of Winnipeg, two hours north of Winnipeg. But you know what? This summer when I was down in Nashville, a fella who mixes my music,
Mm-hmm.
he told me I have the thickest Canadian accent he's ever heard. And then this other fella, a fan out of Michigan, was like, "You have a really strong Canadian accent." I'm like, what?
Okay. So I don't hear it quite as much.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, I could tell you're there. I could tell you're from Canada because I could pick up some of the pronunciations and whatnot. But when I was in college, I interned for a baseball team, and we had a lot of Canadian baseball players, and it was a this and and it was just like like the thickest prototype Canadian accents you could hear, and it was really hard for me to talk to them because at that time I just thought it was like the weirdest slash funniest thing. So
Amazing. Okay, so I don't have the thickest one you've heard yet.
yes, yes, yes. Um, so growing up in just outside of Winnipeg, normal child, would you consider it a normal childhood, or what was it like growing up there?
Those first 6 years were beautiful. My mom was a young mom, single young mom, 20. So, I mean, that was tough for her, 100%. That was not easy. But my grandparents picked up the slack, and so did my uncle. So, we grew up in the country with my grandparents, my uncle, and my mom, and it was beautiful. I had a sandbox in between two old oak trees. Like my papa he was a fisherman. I'm a
Mhm.
vegetarian, but he was a commercial fisherman. So he'd be like, doing nets, and I'd have my little desk outside, and I like grew up truly in the country. But my mom married a musician when I was 8, 7, turning 8, and things got crazy. So a lot of my songwriting comes from the dysfunction of my childhood.
Mm.
Um, and being around the music industry forever and always. Like I didn't start taking music serious until later on, but Music was always a part and piece of my childhood, my family, my grandparents, my mom, my stepfather, my brother, everybody's musical. So it was just, that was a big, important part of my childhood as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's that it's always interesting where those inspirations kind of come from. And yeah, it's crazy when you kind of look back at from an older perspective, like not saying you're old or anything, but just like from an older
What?
perspective. Yep. I'm sure I'm probably a little bit older than you anyway, so we'll just kind of leave it there. But so when you were kind of first exploring music and like kind of exploring playing music, writing music, singing, stuff of that nature, who were you listening to at that time? Like musically speaking.
Okay, well, I love the Stones. I love Miranda Lambert. I love a lot of like when I first started taking music serious because I did everything I was supposed to do in terms of society. I went to university, I got 2 degrees, I got a full-time permanent job, but then I got hit by a semi truck and I fell into and had a terrible boss. And I fell into extreme depression. But then I got serious about music and yeah, I realized that this is what I wanted to do, but I started learning about the music industry. But I love songwriters. Like, I mean, to each their own. Everybody, there's some people who don't have to write songs and they are at the mecca of their success and they're doing amazing. But I love songwriting and I love the stories behind the songs. Like, yeah, so a lot of Miranda Lambert, a lot of the Stones, Johnny Cash. Those were my favorites then, but I have many others now.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you kind of start with what you know, and then as you kind of start writing your own music, and obviously with the way technology is, it'll start recommending new stuff for you to listen to, and then you start gravitating towards certain things, and you start listening to stuff you never thought you'd listen to as a kid. It's pretty cool.
It's
So
amazing. I love Casey Musgraves and Zach Bryan and Hardy. Like those are such talented songwriters and Tyler Childers or what's his last name? Is it
Childers, I think.
Childers. Boy,
Yeah.
he's good. Like those songwriters are my favorite right now.
Yeah. 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 It's those are really solid songwriters, and even some of the younger kids that are coming up that are like 22, 23 that are coming in right behind them.
Mhm.
It's like, dang, like there's just so many good songwriters out right now, and yourself included, like listening to old fashioned values. We're jumping the gun here a little bit, but I I had a very stressful day at work today. So like when we first started talking about rescheduling and whatnot, I was literally at my lowest point during the day.
Okay.
So like it's not that big of a deal. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And so I get into my car, I'm like, okay, I'm going home. Like I've had enough to today. I'm going home. And we're gonna do this podcast at 6:30 and it's gonna be great. And I'm like, okay, let me get kind of back into the vibe of what I need to be in. Turned on old fashioned values. I'd heard it three, four, maybe five times before, because back when we were going to originally do the podcast, right as it was coming out, I had heard it a few times and I've heard it a few times since. And then for whatever reason, at 4:45, when I left work, I turned that song on and it all made sense. Like for whatever reason, the state of mind I was in, everything that I had just gone through, and the phone call I just had with my dad, and it was just like that song came on, and everything made sense.
That's
So,
beautiful. That's beautiful. Because that's what it like as a songwriter, like I don't think people realize how sacred it is when
hmm
your song actually like touches somebody's life.
hmm
Like that's insane. That's something that I wrote with my dear friend
hmm
that it could touch somebody. Like people have told me they listened to that and they cried, like automatically started crying and like Or I have another song, Walk Away. That was the first song I wrote by myself that I put out. That was the first song I put out as my, like, as an artist, not just a singer in a band, as an actual artist. And there have been women who send me messages who are like, Brandi, I was in an extremely abusive relationship, and that song gave me the courage to leave. And I'm just like, oh, like crying myself. I'm like,
Hmm.
holy Anna. Because in my mind, like Keith Richards says, I'm a conduit. I
Hmm.
could be walking, I could just hear something, and I'm like, amazing. And I write it down, and then I bring it into my co-writes, and it's just like spirit, great spirit,
Hmm.
who whatever person believes in, just that songs, they come from somewhere, you channel
Hmm.
them, and they just take a life of their own, and you have no idea how they're going to help people or
Hmm.
impact people, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And one thing I love about you and your music, and it's very hard nowadays in the music industry to find people like you that are authentic to who they are. They are not pretending to be something that they're not. And after I had that experience driving home, listening to old fashioned values, I had to listen back to it again because I was just sitting there. I was like, nope, let's put this back on because I don't, maybe I don't know. I just wanted to listen to it again, make sure I understood the epiphany or whatever you want, the realization that I just had.
Beautiful.
And then I just realized, like, Brandi, you are who you say you are. Like, it's so amazing. And I'm so glad that we've finally got this opportunity to sit down and chat a little bit. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for writing the song and putting it out there.
Well, thank you. I did it for my grandparents because I'll tell you this much. Considering I grew up with my grandparents, like the album cover is my papa from 1940, okay? I'm
Okay.
Red River Métis. Most Americans don't know what Métis is. My people are only from North America. We're a
Hmm.
mixture of, mainly our origin is European trader men came here in the 16, 1700s. They met mainly Cree and Native women,
Hmm.
and we have our own culture. So
Hmm.
I was raised in the country with my Red River Métis grandparents, both of them. And my papa is like, he was born in 1935.
Oh
He
wow.
says exactly what he means. There's no mincing words. He's colorful. So am I. Like, I mean, I'm a school teacher and I have to keep things between the lines because I have
Yeah.
students between like 6 to 29 years old. Okay. So, I mean, I say what I want to say, and I say it in my songs, like my song Kiss Mine. I tell people literally to kiss my, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
So, because I had a papa who just, you hit first, you talk later, I
Hmm.
have that grit in me where, yeah, if I wasn't, I think if he wasn't, he was my main, he was like my father growing up. Okay, I didn't grow up with my dad. Um, but if I didn't have him to be direct and just like from another world, I truly think I could be a phony baloney. I could be chasing things. I could be trying to sound like somebody else, but that's lame, you know? Like
Hmm.
my experience as a Red River Métis woman, that people are like, what the heck is that? I get to share my history, my ancestors, all the things that are in me, my dysfunctional stories, my crazy past. But I mean, it's real. It's not
Hmm.
fake. It's a real lived experience. And I thank you for saying you appreciate that.
Yeah. 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 This is a realization that I've come like this year, what's it been, 5 weeks? We're 5 weeks into the year, whatever it is. I my our podcast has been such on such a different level as far as the conversations because I hit a real low point at the end of the year in 2023. I had traveled all the way to Chicago to go visit my family to get sick with COVID, and then I couldn't see my family, and I was pissed off because I drove that entire way and I was sick and I was miserable and I had 103 feet, just like I don't
Mhm.
have to describe what COVID is. Everybody knows what happens when you get COVID. And I pull into my grandma's driveway because that's where we were all kind of congregating when we weren't at parties and whatnot. And my dad, I'm call or my dad, my sister calls me and says, "Hey, I don't want you to come over Christmas Eve. I don't want you to get the baby," because she has a 1 year old. She's
Mhm.
like, "I don't want you to get the baby sick." I call my aunt. She's like, "Well, I don't really have a problem with you coming over, but your cousin might, and her husband might, there's a few people that might have an issue. So I'm going to leave that at you." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm not, I'm, I know you're trying to be nice, but I get what you're saying."
Mhm.
So I called my dad. I was like, "All right, well, this was a bust. I'm going home. I'm going to drive back." And there was this moment where my dad was standing in the garage and I was like 10 feet in front of him. And I went to go give him a hug and I realized, oh, I can't hug you right now because if I
Mhm.
do, I'm going to get you sick. And it was just like this real emotional moment because my dad's not young. He's like almost 70. And so it's just like I know I'll see him again, but in that moment it was like there's a chance I can never see my dad again and I can't hug him right now because
Mhm.
and so I started looking at life differently. And this year, like that realization that I had every time I listen to somebody's music, I feel like something, I don't know, like it has been a crazy year. And all that to say, once again, thank you for doing what you do and putting your music out.
Thank you. That emotional connection's huge.
Yes. How how do you kind of handle putting yourself in these mental spaces, like old fashioned values or, dodged a bullet? How do you handle when you go out to like play these live or whatever? How do you kind of handle that? Like, does that weigh down on you having to kind of put yourself back in these certain moments to get that realism when you perform?
Well, in some songs, like Alberta Rose, my uncle, my best uncle, like I said, I grew up with my uncle and I love the Stones and like I love all of so many like parts and pieces of my life were impacted by my uncle.
Mhm.
It mentions my mom, my uncle, my grandma, my papa, my granny in Alberta Rose, and my uncle died of pancreatic cancer.
Wait a minute. Hold on. My mother passed away from pancreatic cancer 2 years ago.
I'm so sorry.
It's I feel with you right now. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Mm-mm. So like, I mean, I'm getting teary-eyed right now. I couldn't sing it. I couldn't sing it on stage. Um, but I can now. Sorry, I'm crying. But I think when you have a tear, like it's uncomfortable. Like some people are like, oh, that's a lot.
mm,
But when you're an artist and you're on like my job, number one, when people come watch me,
mm,
they, like today's a terrible night and they go out and say they come and watch me tonight. Like my responsibility is for them to have a good time and for them to feel something. And if you come and watch me and I get choked up and I have a hard time for to getting through a song, you experience that emotion with me as a human being.
mm-hmm,
So I'm okay with crying. I'm okay now. Like I'm 11 years sober, okay?
mm-hmm,
When I drank, I didn't cry. I swear to God, I didn't cry for like 20 years. I did not cry. Um, so now I'm at a place in my own recovery and in my own life that it's a lot. Like some of my songs are like they're intense. Like Dodged a Bullet. I went to a funeral and I seen my ex there and I didn't know he had a baby with this girl who he got with after and blah blah blah. And I'm just kind of like, Ugh. And that song came from death or like depth, like I dodged the ultimate bullet, and I meant that with everything inside me. And yeah, and there's parts and pieces of my song you're like, ooh, like it's been a rough ride, but so what? And they sing well. Like Dodge the Bullet is fun to play on stage because it's badass,
mm-hmm,
and the bass line is excellent. And like I have to put myself in a place like I can go from being like singing a lovely song like Old Fashioned Values, where I'm sweet and I'm kind, but then in the next minute I can kick your ass, you know?
Yes. I love it. I love it so much. So what's kind of the plan moving forward with your music? Are you kind of staying in the singles realm, or are you kind of building towards a bigger project right now?
Well, I would love to. Oh my God, I have so many good songs, Tom. It's crazy. I would just love to be like, ta-da! But
Right?
that's not the way it works. See, my music, I'm so fortunate. My music gets played on Sirius XM in Canada, and I
Yes.
make a beautiful lifestyle as a result. So, those songs, Sirius XM is very different than Spotify. Like Spotify would love me to put out music every 6 weeks, but
Hmm.
it doesn't work that way. So I have an EP, I have an album coming, but I've been writing my ass off. I've been writing my ass off with such accomplished writers that I always come into writes, I know what I want to say. I know the
Mm.
topic and I feed and I feed and I feed the idea and it grows. But I've been writing with such accomplished writers that I have songs that are like about the Canadian experience of, say, the buffalo, like in North America, from Texas to where
Hmm.
I'm, there were 70 million.
Hmm.
And by the time they were slaughtered to damn near extinction, there was less than 500 on the plains.
Yep.
So I have a song like that, that there's two extraordinary Canadian artists I wrote that with, Julian Taylor and Crystal Shawanda, who are both Juno winners. That's like a big award in
Yes.
Canada.
Hmm.
And that one I can't wait to put out and get funding, because we get grants in Canada, that I can't
Yes.
wait for like the Canadian public to be like, oh, because that one's like to your bones.
Yeah.
But I've been writing with my number one writer right now. My number one partner, my co-writer Styles Howery. He's signed to Warner Chappell. He's from Nashville. Check him out. He is the best. I love him. But I have so many wonderful singles, but I have two teams. I have my American team. Old Fashioned Values was done with at Saxman Studios.
Hmm.
One of the players on there played on Jelly Roll's entire album. It's
Nice.
like it's crazy.
Right? That's so cool. I have so much respect for that man. Like that's so crazy. So,
And Nathan, yeah, he played like these are so my Nashville team are like all these young up and comers, experience like ones who are experienced. They played on the road, they played with a lot of different bands, play with Luke Combs. Like these guys are like they're at the top of their games and they're young, okay?
mhm.
And then my Canadian team are all the session musicians that play on my music. They are all a Hall of Fame Canadian Country Music Award winners. Like I have these two insane teams that I go from like this to it just my mind is blown right now. And Styles and I have a plan. So my plan for 2024 is we're going to pitch some of our songs to sell.
Mhm.
And then I have like songs that are just like kick ass, ready to rock and roll, different pieces and parts of me, because it can't just be all the same. Like, I want to keep people guessing that you're like, whoa, I
Yeah.
never heard this from Brandi before. And I intend to do some touring this year because I think it's important now. I have a really great fan base here in Winnipeg. But I don't know, have you ever heard of the artist William Prince from Manitoba?
Uh, no, no.
He's
Yeah.
I went to university with him. He's First Nations, he's native, okay?
Okay.
So he has the perfect career. For me, he has a beautiful Canadian fan base that he's selling out like theater size, like selling out
Yeah.
theater sized venues. He has a beautiful, lovely American fan base, and he has a European fan base.
Nice.
So to me, that is success. And then all the royalties and the touring and the merch and the fans, everything, right? So I want to stay indie like I do. I like the way things are right now. But I'm looking to get a booking agent and a manager
Mm.
and just keep building this thing because it's beyond me and it's working. Like it blows my mind.
Yeah. 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 It's the industry right now, the over the last few years has made it so that yes, doing the arena tours and doing Taylor Swift style things where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Tokyo and then I'm gonna fly back to Vegas to go to the Super Bowl, like all that stuff. that's all well and good and that's fun. But there are a lot of musicians out there that are playing 200 shows a year in front of, I don't know, what do theaters hold right now? 700,000, 50, like depending on the theater?
Theaters, I would say like 15,000,
50,
30,000.
okay. Uh, Different theater. I guess I'm going to different theaters. I don't
Those are
know. But
massive theaters.
yeah. Um, but yeah, they're doing theaters that are big enough that they can kind of book them on their own and not necessarily need like a label to, book these shows for them, but it's still big enough that you have to go get like a tour manager to kind of like manage the day-to-day stuff. But for the most part, the artist is keeping everything. Like they're employing people. They're big enough to employ people, but it's also big enough that they can live on and not have to have that day job. It's like, oh, I can only tour Friday, Saturday, Sunday because Monday through Thursday I've gotta be at the office, like whatever it is. So
So as soon as I can get, see, I'm still a part-time teacher. I work from 8:40 till 3 or till 12 rather. I would die if it was 3. But I have a lovely job. I'm the librarian and I work with the little ones who are just a little bit behind. I'm lit support. So I work 3 hours a day and I have a lifestyle that I love. Like I'm able to do the things that I want to do. Everything is invested in my music right now. And I can feel it in my bones that things are it's not a losing gamble. It's not a
yeah.
gamble. Like it's an investment that's working.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I can be like, well, this has been lovely. Thank you for all the years teaching. It grew me up and made me into an adult. But now I shall retire. And as soon as I
Mm-hmm.
get that, woo!
Right, right, right. I'm right there with you. I'm probably about a year and a half away from, making that transition to a smaller role at work, and then probably 6 to 12 months after that, it'll be I'm fully independent on my own, because this year we've rolled a few things over. Now they're starting to turn some profit, and the fan base is starting to like really take off. And it's like, okay, cool. I love this. This is where I want to be. And now you just got to kind of let things bloom and blossom. Because if I were to leave right now, it'd be 3 months. I need a job. Somebody, one of these things. So
Good for you. It's planning for success, right?
yes, yes, yes. But I'm so proud to hear that you're not that you're looking, you see the end, not the end goal, because the end goal differs for everyone, but you see that next chapter and you're ready for it, and you're ready for that next chapter to take your career like wherever it is you ultimately want to go.
100%. And it's my honor to be able to teach people about my culture. Like in my band, when we play live, I always have a fiddle. I know fiddle's big in Texas, right? But then I teach about the Red River Jig. That's like part of my culture. So that's, it's more like what makes you different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like instead of being like, how are you the same as everybody else out there? It's focusing on what makes you different. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is part of my show. I teach people, how to jig and it's fun and it's interactive, it's audience participation, and I'm teaching about my culture. Like, that's different. And people they're interested in knowing like who the heck are you? So yeah, it's an honor.
Nice, 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 nice. So how often are you playing shows right now? Are you playing several times a week, month? Like, where's kind of your gauge at with shows right now?
Monthly. I'm going on a weekend tour this month in February. But then for us, festival season's like the big thing.
Hmm.
And I don't play bars. I've never played bars. I've been able to bypass playing bars, but I'm sober. I mean, like I got my chops earlier in life playing with my grandparents' band and getting on stage with my brother who sings, but I don't have to be, I mean, people to each their own, but I don't grind each weekend in bar gigs for like 5 hours for, that's just not how that's not how I live. But
Yeah,
festival season's huge. That's when I rock and roll across, the province. But like I said, it's time to get out of Manitoba. And Yeah, I play a lot of like arts councils and a lot of cultural events, and it's great. Like it's
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah. I remember one of my first independent shows that I went to was at I was living in Roswell, New Mexico, and we had just went to a music festival. It was supposed to be like a new age new generation version of Woodstock is like what they kept saying. It's like, oh, this is gonna be like Woodstock. It wasn't, but I digress. And we met this band, and they're like, "Oh, hey, y'all from Roswell?" And I'm like, "We're playing there in like 2 weeks. Why don't you come see us play?" They were playing at the local. It was like an art gallery. It was like a modern art gallery, and I
Oh,
didn't know. I knew the art gallery was there because we had done some stuff with them before, but I didn't know that they did shows. Like they put on like cultural type shows because these guys played oh, what's the wasn't Apache. I know Apache's big in New Mexico, but there was another like native
Dan.
tribe. Yeah, it was like a tribe that they played a lot of instruments from and they
Cool.
brought them in. So yeah, it was really cool and yeah,
Love that. And there's also you're learning about culture as well. So that's
yeah.
even people don't realize like with language and music, like there's a real spirituality to that. Like when you hear an indigenous person speak their own language, there is, or anybody who speaks who speaks their own language, there is a spiritual element that you can't buy, but you can feel, and it's beautiful. And I would love to go all throughout the states and just experience different, you call them tribes, we call them
Mm,
bands.
yeah,
But yeah, I need to go do I love doing ceremony. I need to go do
yeah,
ceremony with some American natives. I do.
yes,
That's
yes,
on my
yes.
goal list.
I'm a lot more aware of, the some of the preconceived notions that tribes or natives have towards white people because we had an experience that kind of changed my perspective on things. And yeah, so it's something that it's all like working and going to like native lands. I've always enjoyed like working with native bands and native musicians, but I'm a lot more like, okay, I'm more calculated with what I say. So, yeah.
Well, good, because you also just have to understand that in the States it was different. Like you guys had Indian wars.
Hmm.
Like flat out just killed native people. Whereas
Yes.
in Canada it was more systematic. It was terrible, but it's just a very different lived experience, right?
Yeah.
Like I think in the States, you guys don't really see native people much.
The it they so they're still very pocketed as far as like I like they have their own like reservations and there's like little town pockets that are still very native, but that's really all it is. It's like they stay like the Navajo Nations up in like northern Arizona and south or northwest New Mexico, and they kind of stay there. And so they're there, but it's very secluded, kind of.
Totally. And it's amazing that you're even aware. Like when I went to Nashville, I was like, because where I'm from, Winnipeg, we're the heart of Turtle Island. Like
Hmm.
there are there's all sorts of indigenous Métis, First Nations, Inuit. Like we're here. Like we're
Hmm.
like you see us every day, right?
Yeah.
When I went to Nashville, because during the Trail of Tears, they marched all the native people out of the different states,
Hmm.
like marched them to Oklahoma and Florida, and they just moved people out of their traditional territory.
Hmm.
I was like, "Where's the natives?" Like I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my God!" Like I was like, "It's
Yeah.
really white here."
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's different.
What? And so, luckily, I grew up in a school system that taught like the history of like it wasn't every native tribe because I feel like you could have spent like 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
like just learning about like the basics of every tribe because there's so many. But we learned about, so growing up in South Chicago, we learned about like the region of natives that were in our region. So it was a lot of like oh, uh, like Sioux. I want to say like Sioux, and then Ho
Yeah.
Chunk. Is that a? I think that's the name of the tribe. Like there was a, yeah, I think it was called the Ho Chunk tribe. But yeah, so we knew about the regions, and then when I moved down to Florida, I learned about the Seminoles because I lived in Tallahassee for 2 years, and there was a lot of Seminole people there, and that was really interesting. And I lived out in New Mexico, learned about the Apache and the Navajo and all that stuff. And this is really the first place, like in Texas, where it's not been as big of a presence.
Mhm. Well,
So
good for
yeah,
you, Tom, that you actually are aware and like, yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. I
yeah.
appreciate that.
I try. I love history because I'm a firm believer of if you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I like learning from my mistakes, other people's mistakes, and I do my best to like, okay, this happened then. How can I help try and make sure it doesn't happen again?
That's good. Love that.
So yeah, I've always loved history. History's been just one of those things. There was the one class that my mom knew I was never gonna fail. So
Well, it's
every
interesting.
everything else, it was a crapshoot. But history, nope, I had that one on lock. We're good. So
Good for you.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. So kind of looking forward to the summer. What's kind of the plans moving into the summer, festivals and stuff like that, I'm guessing, or
Definite festivals, and I need to do some showcasing. So, in Canada here, we have the Canadian Country Music Awards,
mm,
and the West, I want to go to Breakout West. So I just need to get more in front of industry and get some bookings from showcasing. That's where you get big bookings to go elsewhere. So that is the intention. And thankfully, like I have so many good, it's all about the song, right? Like, I mean,
mm,
the start of my career was fabulous. Like, I mean, I wrote Walk Away myself. And then when I factored in, I started co-writing with the two girls I write with the most, my
mm,
Canadian writing team. We wrote Old Fashioned Values and, or no, we wrote Alberta Rose, and then we
mm,
wrote Gasoline. And Gasoline is good. It's
mm.
very sexual. So I'm always like to the little kids in my school, don't watch Gasoline. Like the video, I'm like, don't look at that one.
Fair, very fair. I get it. I 100% get it. It's so interesting. You brought up like trying to get in front of more industry people. Has that is that a more recent like thing that you've figured out, or have you always tried to get in front of the like industry? Because when we first started doing live and amplified, it was very much screw the industry, we're going to do this ourselves.
Good for you. Yeah, no, this is where my career it's just I only put out my first song in 2019.
Hmm.
I've been very fortunate in the last 5 years. Like it's not even been 5 years that my career has just, you wanted to interview me. Like you that's to me that's humbling. Like, oh my God, people actually know who like care about who I am. So, yeah, now is the time because I feel like I'm at a place in terms of my performance because I wouldn't want to go in front of industry when I was like
Yeah.
to me to be underwhelming, which I'm not because I work hard and I come from a musical family and I'm naturally just like put me in front of a stage and I could speak and it's just natural, right?
Hmm.
But I think it took time to just become prepared. Like I have enough music now that I could play a full hour of my own originals. That took time to build, right? So I truly think if I would have done it that much earlier, if I was like chasing, like I need to see this person needs to see me, that's phony.
Hmm.
Um, but I think as an artist, I'm in a place where I'm more solid and polished, and I'd be better suited to for people to see me now because I also have incredible songs coming. Um, so I think it's just the right time. I was building my fan base, I was putting out music.
Yeah.
It was the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the time is it's right now. And I feel confident and like
Yeah.
I won't underwhelm an audience, which
Yeah.
is my ultimate goal.
Yeah. Two things. So it's funny to me. that you were shocked that I wanted to interview you, or you were excited that I wanted to interview you. I thought it was going to be a long shot that you'd actually accept the interview.
Oh, why, thank you.
Like,
Hey, that's how you build a fan base, you
right?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was sitting there, I was just like, I was going through this process of like, okay, I want to work with new people. Like, I mean, I have my people that I love working with, and I'll interview them anytime I get. But obviously, you got to work with new people, and so I kind of systematically started going through like Instagram. Instagram's been like a gold mine finding new musicians. It's really cool. And I came across your page, and I believe we have a couple of mutual friends. I'll have to go back and reconfirm that one, but I was looking at your Instagram page, and I looked at your Facebook page, and then I went to your Spotify, and I was like, oh, she's not going to have time for me. She's probably out like touring right now or something, you know? And so I just sent the message, and lo and behold, here we sit. So,
Well, yeah, and that's how you make. Okay, I'm not phony. I
mhm,
feel like I said that like 4 times. Okay,
yeah,
like I don't kiss anybody's ass, and I never will. But how you make, I think the way you move through the industry and how you make, new fan bases is actual real things called relationships.
mhm,
And no matter if a person is, say it's like an 18-year-old kid who wants to interview me for their brand new podcast, that kid could end up being the head of A&R for Sony at some
mhm,
time. If I'm an a-hole to them now, do you think they're not going to forget that?
mhm. Oh, I know. Yeah,
I think it's important to treat people with dignity and respect and have humility. Like, I mean, like I'm honored you wanted to interview me. Like, thank you.
yeah. It's so funny you made that comparison because there's only two people that like that. There's some people that they'll be, they'll just like turn you down nicely. Oh, I don't have time in my schedule right now, and like I get it. I 100% get that. I've had two people that were so rude to me, just in general. Like, I reached out to one person. I was like, "Hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. I saw you got a new project dropping here. Love to have you on, chat a little bit. If you want to keep, because they're a little bit bigger name, if we can keep it short, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I will, I just love the opportunity to sit down and chat with you and pick your brain. Oh, sorry, you're not worth my time." And so I have their phone number in my phone under not worth my time.
That's mean to even talk to somebody like that. But that also goes to show where that person's headspace is, and that's not a
Mhm.
very kind person.
Yes, it's so I have a like a list of like goals, and one of my selfish like um evil conniving goals, like I have a couple that are like, okay, you're being a little selfish there, but they're very funny, is I'm waiting for that phone number to call me, be like, "Hey, I got a new project. I'd love to be on your podcast."
And then build it and keep going.
Yes. So, it's yeah, so just the way you kind of worded all that, I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be a fun story." So,
Good.
so how's the let's talk a little bit of the Canadian music scene here before we start wrapping this up. What's the scene like in Winnipeg?
We have a beautiful music. We have all sorts of different types of music here. It's actually incredible. There's a lot of incredible artists who are coming out of Winnipeg and who are from Winnipeg. It's it's interesting. It's really interesting because you know what? Like, I think anybody who's secure,
Mhm,
they're going to support other people. But I think when people are insecure, they see other people as a threat, which is so weird. Like there's enough music for everybody. Not everybody has the same goals, not everybody has the same sound. Like just be cool. But we have we have great venues and there are some amazing, like I said, some of the ones who are like absolutely kicking ass right now. Check out
mhm.
William Prince, he's doing really well. Golden Boy, he's from Winnipeg and he's having a huge, like, he's doing really well.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear of him before?
No, I have not.
Yeah, he's interesting. there's a gal named Begonia who tours a lot in the States. She has like her own little, there's like some names coming out. What's his name? The Guess Who are from Winnipeg. They're huge. Everybody knows who
Mm,
the Guess Who is.
yeah.
And Neil Young was from, he grew up in Winnipeg, actually.
Oh wow. Nice.
Yeah. So there's some interesting, fabulous people who have come from this town and ones who are coming up, and there's just always live music.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
good. Winnipeg
Nice.
has a good scene.
Nice. I'm systematically trying to get to Canada. I've been to Canada once in my life, kind of.
Okay.
My dad was working in Detroit and he was like, "Hey, you want to go to Canada for lunch?" And he took me to Windsor. So,
Cool, Ontario.
yeah. And so that's my big Canada experience. Not really. I don't really consider it because it's like such on the border that it's like, okay, we're in Detroit North, I guess. I don't know. Um but we've worked with so many musicians, a lot of like Toronto based, a lot of Vancouver based, and then British Columbia. What's like very far east Canada?
No, that's on the west. British Columbia is Vancouver, and
Okay.
then East Coast is like all the maritime provinces.
Okay.
So New Brunswick, Halifax, that's
New Brunswick, that's what it is. I don't know why I was, yeah, but we've worked with a few people from New Brunswick and stuff of that area. So it's like I want to do like a summer tour because I know anything in the winter probably isn't the smartest idea,
no,
but
very bad idea. Do not do that.
yeah. So I definitely want to try and do like a summer podcast tour or something in Canada.
Let me know when you're coming through town. I'll take you for lunch.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, So outside of music, when you're not working, when you don't have to worry about music, what do you do to kind of relax?
I love working out. I like lifting weights. I like being strong. I like knowing that I could like fight to the death if I had to. Uh,
Nice. I love it.
yeah, I don't like to be a wimp. I have wild Mustangs that are east of the city. I have a little cat colony as well. They're community cats that I've gotten like over 20 of them fixed. They're like strays and ferals. They're ferals in our area. And yeah, I love my animals and I love being home. I enjoy being home and writing and relaxing, and I love my grandparents. So each week I spend an hour going east to see my horses and an hour going north to see my grandparents. So I always have to fit them in my schedule. It's busy, but they both they're my favorites.
Yes. It's one of those things where, especially with the grandparents, you don't know how much time you got, and any time you can spend with them, it's worth it. So,
100%. They're on borrowed time right now, right? And it's like it's crazy. Like old-fashioned values reminds me of like our time's limited.
mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
think when you get to be a certain age, you start to realize like all this time to find myself to get to this place right now, recognizing that there's only how much more time left. And it's the most beautiful thing you can give to somebody your time. So whoever said to you, it's not worth my time, that's shameful. And I mean, like you also lost your mom, I lost my uncle.
Hmm.
You never get that time back. So it's just like investing it in the people who love you and you love and you have fun with. Like that's the
Hmm.
name of the game these days for me.
Yeah. What was that experience with your uncle where you kind of started to have this realization that time is precious? Or have you always kind of had it?
No, you know what? In the last 2 years, I lost three of my best friends.
Oh,
My,
wow.
my uncle was my best friend. My best friend growing up died 2 weeks after 2 weeks before my uncle.
Hmm.
And one of my absolute best friends passed away in June of 2023. So it's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was a lot of loss and just realizing like they're gone and they're
Hmm.
not coming back. So I need to live a life that honors them the best I can. And I get to write songs about them. Like I wrote a song about the three of them called Let Them Stay. And it's so
Oh, wow.
beautiful to make a person cry like but
Wow.
yeah,
Hey. And that's so wow. Sorry, that one took me back a minute. So, with with your writing, you said you wrote a song about the three of them. Is that the most recent song that you've written, or where are you kind of at writing right now, writing wise?
No, I wrote that one 3 days. I couldn't even get out of bed. When Ernie
Mhm.
died, I couldn't even get out of my bed.
Oh,
I
wow.
was grief stricken. And Styles, I was like, Styles, let's rebook this. He's like, no, Brandy, let God do it now. So we dug into my pain, like my
Mhm.
actual, I don't even know if I had makeup on in that right. Um, but as he sang different lines as we were doing the work tape, I was like, like it just got me, you know. But where I'm at right now is I have two amazing writing teams. I got Styles in the States, and then we add different people in. And then I got my girls here in Canada.
Nice.
And my producer, my main producer here, Styles and Murray produce my music. And Murray's like, Brandy, you have two A teams, girl. You have two A teams. Don't change a damn thing. So I just hit my groove. I've hit my stride, and these beautiful songs just keep coming out, and they're meant to. So I just write. I write monthly and I write often, and these songs are meant to come into the world.
Mm, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Well, I will tell you this, if you ever make it to Texas, please let me know. I will take you to Texas. I will come to you, take you to Texas barbecue, all the fun Texas things, and it'll be a grand old time. So,
I'm in. I'd love to two-step in Texas.
yes. If you could find a dance hall in Texas, so they're starting to become a little too far, a little far, too far, yeah, whatever that saying is. Few far in between. There you go. That
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, how do you say it? My Midwest fat tongue is getting the best of me right now. So, um, but if anybody wants to check out your music, your shows, any of that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
On my website, brandivezina.com. I favor Instagram. I find it the most interesting and enjoyable. I'm on the Facebook. But yeah, if they want to message me from my website or find me on Instagram. I like Instagram.
Instagram is so cool. I love it. I'm addicted to it now.
I hear you.
I feel so bad for my Facebook because we spent so long building up the Facebook page and all gone to the side because of Instagram.
Don't quit. Just do a little bit in there too.
Oh yeah.
Spread it around.
That's kind of why before we jumped on here, I saw you liked my music tip that I put out. I had this interesting idea of what if I just start posting nothing but music tips and just like flood my Instagram feed about that. And so now what I do is I put that on I build them out in Facebook because in Facebook you can do the text and it gives you like the really cool color backgrounds. So I was like, okay, let's do that. Build it here, post it, and
Yeah.
not then post it over on Instagram. And I started doing that this morning. I don't know why. I just did. So,
I like that post. That was a good one because you either evolve or you die like the dinosaurs. It's one's
mm,
choice, right?
yep, 100%. So, but really appreciate you. It's been an absolutely incredible conversation. There's so much to take away from this. And I don't tend to like to go back and listen to my own interviews just because I can't stand the sound of my voice, but I don't know,
Mhm.
that's just me. But this one, I think I'm gonna sit down and like really listen to it. So
Right on, Tom. I had an enjoyable time. I thank you very much.
yes, absolutely. Once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you are listening to this on Spotify after the recording, we will have Brandy's Spotify link and Instagram link all in the description, so you can check out Old Fashioned Values and all the amazing music. It's actually quite funny because your Christmas song kept popping in a couple of times while I was prepping for this interview, and I'm like, it's not Christmas. Let me find a different song. So it was quite funny because it's kind of in your most popular or whatever. So that was kind of an interesting treat to get. So, but Brandy, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, and we will talk to you all later.